Hi, and welcome to Commerce Consults with Logic.io, where Blake, our VP of Marketing, and our team of configuration experts break down the experience and usability of B2B e-commerce sites across multiple industries. Today, we're consulting Xerox, a pioneer in office supplies and technology founded in 1906 and now headquartered in Norwalk, Connecticut. Xerox has over 10,000 employees globally and brings in over $7 billion in revenue annually. Their business has kept up with customer and market demands for over a century. Let's take a look at their website with Blake and our configuration expert Fazal Gupta, a co-founder of Logic.io and our VP of Product. Enjoy.
Hey, we're here with another Commerce Consults with Fazal Gupta, our VP of Product here at Logic. Today's website that we're going to go and take a look at, the commerce experience that we'll be evaluating, is Xerox. So Fazal, starting the way we always do here, taking a look at Xerox's homepage when you hit their site. Kind of how easy is it for you as a first-time buyer, so to speak, to go and figure out kind of where to go and how to find the things that you need?
Yeah, excited to be here. Thanks, Blake. Well, with Xerox, because that's a name which, it's a great company. It became a verb with printing, right? So part of the interesting thing when I've come to their website is typically, depending on the kind of audience I am, like I'm a typical B2B buyer, Xerox is probably synonymous with printing. When I come in here, I do see like the top level categories, which I think is interesting. The hero image is pretty interesting strategically. I think how Xerox is positioning itself, which can be good and bad, depending on the knowledge of the audience. If I'm coming for printer, if I don't read this information, I'll be like, am I in the right place?
Right.
That could be very interesting. So nothing wrong with it. It's just, I think, a reality of companies reinventing themselves and how they go about it. I think that there could be some more information of, providing contextually to the user, some data on the kind of products they offer, a little bit more cleanly on the hero image. But otherwise, if I look at the website homepage, it's a pretty nicely designed page. Like the upfront, it's like shows you sort of different services they offer, right? The different kind of products they can offer. Doesn't tell me exactly either the product names or categories that well, unless I look at the top part where there is some information there. So initial impression is like, okay, looks correct, but I'm not sure what else to do out of this homepage right now.
Right. Yeah, it looks pretty informational here on the homepage compared to some other sites that we've taken a look at. So kind of how do you actually go and, get to a place that's more specific when it comes to, okay, I'm looking for these types of products for my office, or I'm looking for these office supplies. How do you go about getting there?
Yeah. So I'm thinking, let's say we are going to assume ourselves as a persona. We'll kind of look at it in two ways. One, I think I'm looking for a specific kind of product which Xerox might do, like a printer, right? And then we can look at a more general use case. So let's start with the printer use case. So let's say Xerox, being such a great company known for printing, I want to get in and see some of the printers. Now, I might come in and just say, I want to just look at the category printers just to get started and see what Xerox might be offering. And I come to this page, it provides a bunch of information. I think the design is a little bit interesting because the design contrast, I think, is pretty different than what we saw on the homepage. So that's a little bit jarring, I think, for the user as they navigate from a design perspective. Now I see the information being spread out in a pretty interesting manner here. The categories are clear, but it's kind of mixing up two things, right? It's mixing up the persona. So if I'm buying for office or home, that's one kind of persona. When I'm looking at these categories, it says Xerox digital processes, office printers, and multifunctional all-in-one printers. It's not exactly clear if these categories are exclusive. So that's sort of one weird thing along with the design on this page.
Yeah, you're right. It's unclear if this is just kind of a list of the types of things that they have, or a list or a description as you go down the page. I also thought it was interesting as you hover over the printers and supplies up there in the navigation, how there's all these lists of products and product types, right? And then there's an option for shop online and there's an option for product finder, right? I think as a buyer, I would kind of expect if I'm in the printer section that I would be getting the list of products to be able to shop, right? I would be able to be getting right there. So it's interesting that they don't have it set up that way.
Exactly. And that's the part. Since I told you I was interested in printers, as a user, you could guide me on saying, what are you looking for your home, for your office, right? Or buying in bulk. Based on that, I can show you information which is exactly relevant to your choice. Right now, I kind of told you my choice and you're showing me relevant information, but it is too broad. And I think there is an opportunity to ask the user, because they are probably willing to give you that information right now. So you just haven't asked them yet.
Yeah, especially for a brand like Xerox, like you said, that just has such a brand name in the space, right? It's like they don't need to come out here and convince you of the types of products that they have or how great their products are, right? If you're poking around at that level of their site, you can probably just guide them to the best solutions that you have for their needs. So
exactly. Well, so let's continue. Let's assume I'm continuing because I really love their products and I'm interested in buying something high quality, which Xerox will provide. So I'm going to go into office printers. So the good part when I get into this category is like I can see where exactly I am, at least in that product centric view. Like it's telling me the navigation, I can go back and forth. It is also keeping like a faceted search available to me. So if I change my mind, which users tend to sometimes, you can. I think the information about the search and how many printers are available is also interesting, but at the same time, it can be overwhelming, right? So again, for a company as big as Xerox and given the number of product lines they will have, it's probably missing an opportunity to ask user more on what they're interested in. Maybe I'm interested in using printer infrequently. So inkjet versus laser might, drive my choices. I'm looking for being cost effective, right? Or I'm looking to do something else. I can siphon through that information based on the search I have here. But I probably would have appreciated some of that questions being asked to me so that I don't have to look at more information than I'm interested in. So if I look at this right now, I have my multifunction printer. It gives me the price, which is very good. And it gives me some details. It's just there are too many of them, right? As we see, there are 33 just on the office printers itself, which I'm being asked to look at. And if I wanted to, I could look at in different views, which is nice. But it doesn't take away that information overload problem, which the user can have. The other interesting part is, so let's kind of go through this a little bit. Right. So I get the basic information, I get the pricing, which is very upfront and very good, so that the user can make that selection. When I start looking at some of the details here, I see the information again, pricing with rebate, which is useful, but doesn't give me any other guidance either. Right. So now I'm in this view, I have that detail and I have the reviews information, which in some ways is useful, but it's not apparent to me, like, is this review related to the information? Because we did not capture the user's intent in showing them this page.
Yeah, it makes sense. And yeah, there's a lot of information happening here. I think the reviews part is interesting, and I know something that we had talked about a little bit, right? Like it's good because it feels very e-commercey, Amazon-like, right, for what we're used to. But I also noticed that there's a bunch of different kind of tabs even there at that middle level for you to just click through, right? Whether it's the specs, the reviews, the prices, the supplies, the software. It's like you're kind of putting it on the user to go through a lot of information and a lot of choices, it feels like, to get what they need for, whatever their needs are. Do you feel that that's the case here?
Exactly. No, and that's very true. And it kind of goes in contradiction to what the original homepage intended, right? It kind of gave you a category, got you down to a point, and now you're at this stage where they are trying to give you as much information as you will need, which is a good thing, but it is not organized in a way that is digestible by the user. Because at this point, yes, I'm interested in this, I can see the reviews, but as you said, there are software and supplies. If I'm a new first-time buyer of this product, let's say, I would rather want a guided experience for me to buy all of that, because I probably need all of that anyways, right? Right now, it is left to the user to see what they want to buy. And if they did not want to, if they were a repeat buyer, then anyways, this navigation to get to this point is less useful for them, which there are other paths to get to this point. But as a user, I'm not thinking, right? I'm just clicking on the first link, went from there, came to this page. It makes it a little bit suboptimal for either of those personas, which I think is interesting, because you want to optimize at least for a couple of personas really well, and then provide them rest of the information, at least I think as a target strategy on your e-commerce site.
Yeah, they're kind of sitting in between a little bit, and because of that, a little bit in no man's land. And I think it's interesting, even under that prices tab that we were just on too, they call that configurations there, right? As the header, but really just giving you like a part number and a description and telling you to add it to the cart, right? It's more of a find and select or pick from a list type thing versus true configuration, it seems like.
Exactly. There are a lot of opportunities here to do the configuration, right? Before we get to add to cart, pretty much everything which is being shown here, if you think about it, right, as a user, if I'm a technical buyer, it's probably fine. But as we all know, printers is something even my grandma uses, right, at some point in time. There is a lot of opportunity to show them information which is understandable by any user in that way, right? You want to show how many pages you're looking to print on average. And on basis of that, you can automatically tell them this is the printer you may be interested in, right? There's a little bit of that translation. Instead of putting it on the user, you can have something like a commerce logic engine which does that for you, right? And makes it much easier for the user experience on what they need to select.
Right. Makes sense. So when you go through, and just to finish up on this track, when you go through to actually purchase this, it looks like there's a couple options. You can buy it directly through Xerox, and they're giving you some other ways to buy as well.
Yeah, so they definitely have this chat with an online sales representative. Again, something interesting if they had given me more information. The other ways to buy actually is also another interesting thing, which I think strategically is a smart move, right? Because many times this kind of a purchase, people want to do half of the work online and half of the work in some sort of consultative setting. So if you have a powerful platform on the website, you can do the consultative setting. But even if you don't, and you want to talk to somebody in person, showing that information and taking them to those resellers' website itself or to the reseller's contact, I think is very useful based on your zip code. And the fact that there is an add to cart, I think is also good. Like if I like what I saw and I want to buy it, I can click on add to cart. Now, this is showing me the basic information, the specification. One interesting thing which I noted was, if you see, the experience kind of changed on me a little bit, right? And I have some attention to detail in some things, and you see like the whole experience URL also changed, which is not wrong in some ways, but I think the catch is, am I on the same website? I don't know, right? And people care about it, especially you want a consistent experience. You want to be able to embed that kind of in a single experience of configuring something, finding, configuring, and purchasing it, right? If you're going to give them an add to cart.
Yeah, it can definitely cause drop off in conversion rates if you're all of a sudden switching the UI or switching the navigation, right? If people get confused, they'll go and Google something else, right?
Yeah.
You don't want to sequence the process where you're giving people the chance to leave your site. So so what happens when you go ahead and add that to the cart there?
Yeah, so now we'll go ahead and start adding it to the cart, which is good, like as a typical e-commerce site. So it looks like I can actually purchase it if I wanted to. They also give me some just-in-time offer, which I think is very smart. Well, like to upsell to the customer. They probably could have given some upsell options even earlier, because I think there could be a money left on the table in some way, if you think about it, right, on what customer might be interested in based on the offer which was available. So if they could syndicate that experience earlier in the process, that had some value. But if I continue, let's say, going through this checkout, I think the site is actually taking me through that experience. And like any experience of checkout, I think this experience works well. I'm going to assume it works well rather than paying that money today. But it's good that they are able to complete the transaction.
Yeah. Going back to your point on the last page too, it's good that they've surfaced that just-in-time offer. But even going back to what we were talking about before, right? There's all these other ancillary products or add-on products and software and paper or whatever it is, right? That inevitably these buyers will need in one way or another. It'd be interesting for them to try surfacing those types of things much earlier in the process rather than like almost as an afterthought, right? I think as e-commerce buyers, at least for me, I'm just used to kind of brushing those things off at the end, right? When they just surface the last minute, like, do you want to also add this to your cart? It's a little bit different than if earlier in the process you're saying, hey, here is something that will fit perfectly for exactly what you're trying to do here, right?
Exactly. And that's where I think a lot of B2B buying and a lot of like buying sophisticated or somewhat higher end products like printers also, right? It cannot be exact replica of what many consumer sites do. Because on Amazon, if I'm buying 2 or 3 disjointed things, as a user, it's okay because it's kind of my mental model on what I'm looking for. When I come in to buy a printer, as we said, take the example of being a first-time buyer or trying to buy a printer, the new printer, I'm looking to buy that. The fact that I have to go through and add to cart for one and then look at going back and adding the rest of the cartridges, spare parts, or software, whatever else I may need, you can package it nicely into a common solution selling, because that's ultimately what the user was interested in to begin with, right? I think that's where there are opportunities. Even when somebody chooses to buy a printer, what actually they were trying to buy might be much bigger. And honestly, that could also mean the money left on the table is increasing, right? Because there's so much upsell naturally possible for the buyer, which you could not give them.
Yeah. I think that point on how B2B and B2C can differ in that way is like, it's a slight distinction, but an important one for these B2B companies to keep.
Well, and if we were to go back, so let's say I am a new buyer, I was interested in going back. First of all, now I'm kind of at a point that I'm not sure what I'm supposed to do. Like, I want to go back and add software to this printer.
Yeah.
So I'll be like, okay, maybe I can edit the cart and see, hopefully it takes me back to some point. I'm at this point and I'm like, I wanted to buy printers. So let me click on the printer link. And now I'm looking at a different page. So this is the other part where the navigation changed. Now it looks interesting. It has some similar information, but it is definitely not the same page, which may be part of the transition as you're, upgrading your e-commerce platform. But I think these are the small, subtle things. If you're trying to capture a new user, you really cannot do, because I don't think now in shop.xerox.com, I'm not able to go back to xerox.com directly, at least not in an obvious manner, unless I probably click here and I'm still stuck in the shop.xerox.com area, which may be the right site. It just needs to be linked better, or you want to drop the user into this site much earlier rather than giving them jarring experiences.
Yeah, it feels like that whole faceted search that we were just looking at is completely different. And again, just giving, less potential drop-off points for the buyer. You're right. If I'm dropped onto a different navigation page that I'm not used to, it's just another potential for me to go look somewhere else.
Exactly. So, but instead of struggling there, let's just go to Xerox.com again, because I trust the name word Xerox, and Xerox, like shopping one while being a subdomain, I would rather like to be in a consistent experience. Mm-hmm. And we can look at some of the other options they have, because there is also the solutions and services buying, which might be for the scenario we were talking about. Maybe that is another way to look at it, right? Instead of buying a printer, maybe I'll just look for a solution itself. Maybe as a B2B procurement buyer, I wanted to see the product office printing solutions, for example, right? That might be the thing I was looking to buy. So I'll go through this navigation and I end up on this page. So it, first of all, is telling me printing and smart workflows. So that's a little bit disorienting, because I think smart workflows is sort of a different category. So just organizing the website in a way which is a little bit more targeted to what the user expressed interest in is, I think, required. Plus, now this website is, I think, less organized than even the one which we saw, or this page particularly in the website is less organized than the one we saw, where I already mentioned I wanted to shop for office printer solutions. Home office printers, small, medium work, Versa link for those. These are, the names are a little confusing, right? It's like, okay, maybe the way to translate this would have been better to say, looking to buy off printer for this employee population or greater than this population, right? I think it's just a small translation you can do for the user rather than the user doing it for you.
Right. It's like you're going to a solutions page hoping that they are going to help match your needs to their products. And instead, you're kind of just dropped into a layer of, hey, here's some products type of thing, right?
Exactly.
Which isn't as useful.
Yeah, and then, so let's go through, we'll continue this. So it's interesting, it talks about enhance, like it gives me a lot of text, and then next step is choosing the new printer, check out our product finder. That's one option, which again takes me away from guided selling, which might be a little overwhelming for a new user because anybody has a fear of missing out. Like, I don't know if I'm getting the best deal. So, I may not go the product finder route.
Right.
And let's say I'm going to go ahead and choose to buy office printers. Again, I'll go through that. Now, this is where, again, I think there's a lot of opportunities on asking the user what you're interested in. So you are interested in office printer based on the kind of work. So if you are a lawyer, your printing requirements are probably very different than if you are a developer.
Right.
It's probably a very different kind of a use case. Getting that guided experience, asking the user what they are interested in, and then showing them the right features is better than showing them the series and putting all of this information in text. Because that's, again, leaving it to the user to read through this information. And as we all know, in the world of TikTok and Instagram Reels, people do not have attention span of more than 8 or 10 seconds. So you're kind of losing the user likely if you're asking them to read this information right now.
Yeah, it's kind of feels like this step in the process is not necessary, right? It's like, okay, just take me to the office printers, right? Especially if there's just 3 categories that they have there in the quick links, right? Just drop me into a place where you can match the right office printer to my needs. I'm not going to read all this information, right?
Exactly. And that's why, like, if I can continue clicking on these links and going into it, performance being one part, and now you're back to that experience, right? So I think the intent of providing guided selling is very useful, but this is where I think the disconnect is there for many B2B companies in general. To be honest, it's one of the things I think as an industry, e-commerce maturity is growing in B2B, but that bridge hasn't been built, where you build some guided selling and then bring user to a point that whatever they already chose, you already have that information. So first giving them a linked view or a linked experience, and capturing all that data so that maybe I never wanted to know exact name of the printer until I see it in the cart, right? You ask me my requirements, I wanted to buy a solution, get the bundle ready and add it to the cart. And then for pricing, I might want to do some comparisons. Then this kind of information is ultimately useful. But I'm kind of walking across the journey too much, where I did some guided selling which wasn't really guided because it was a lot of text, and then ended up on a product page and I have to kind of do that exercise again.
Yep.
Which is where I think, again, a scope to wow the user, there's a lot of chances of doing it.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, thanks, Fazil, for walking through this. I think there's a lot of takeaways here from the guided selling and just overall user experience perspective on commerce to take away here. But thank you again for the walkthrough and appreciate the consult.
Awesome. Thanks, Blake. It's always fun to do these things. So thank you.
Love it.